Kia ora, Lara here, and today I am doing something a little bit different. A few of us in another wee sort of group are working on something called August Artistry, where we're going to do a series of prompts, a sort of 5 prompts for each week, and the idea is we then put that into a journal or notebook or scrapbook of some description. And last year, maybe the year before, I went to a fantastic little workshop with Simone, and I'll link her Instagram page below, her Instagram links below. But I made my first little junk journal, and so what I've just flipped through here was that wee junk journal that I made. Learned all sorts of technological words all about the junk journaling process and things like that, which maybe I'll use some of these soon. So what I am working on here is what I think is called my dashboard, and I am using a Stampin' Up kit. So when you get a sort of card kit or a little mini workshop kit thing from Stampin' Up, you get these handy little boxes. Now I use these boxes for all sorts of things, whether it be storing my embellishments, storing alpha die cuts and ones that I've already cut out, all sorts of different bits and pieces. They're great size for it. But here I'm actually going to use it as the cover of my August Artistry junk journal. So what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting it down a little bit. I decided that I didn't want it to be a super big, like tall journal or anything like that, and I'm just sort of trimming this card down to sort of make that folder shape. And I was tempted to sort of flip it round so that I used that stripy bit as my spine, but I decided to put that on the inside of the journal anyway, and I do end up later on going back and covering it all up. So I've gone through my paper supplies, and I am sort of now tearing up some pieces here. Because it's a junk journal, I didn't want super straight edges all the time, and so just sort of playing around with this and working out some sizes, some pieces. So by folding each of these papers in half, I am sort of creating the pages that are going to go into something that in junk journaling language is called a signature. So a signature is essentially a group of pages that are then linked together to make a section or a chunk or a part of that journal. So I've just gone through here papers that I have used parts of, papers that I have use lots of, and I'm sort of cutting them down so that they will fit inside that cover that I made earlier using the kit box. And I am just using my bone folder here and the odd bit of tearing to sort of trim them down to the right size. So to find the papers, I went through sort of my container of papers that sits near my desk, and I found ones that I had used. So these are from heaps of different collections, different suites. There's even that vellum sheet there with that nice sort of floral that I'm just about to fold up. Now lots of them I don't need to cut or trim. They are perfectly fine, and then a few of them you'll just see me using that ruler there just to tear down one side or two sides if needed. So these are going to be that signature page. So this does take quite a while, so I'm going to just sort of zoom ahead and get into stitching these together into signatures. So what I've done is I've taken each of those folded pieces of paper and I sort of made 3 piles. So I'm going to have 3 signatures inside the cover that I made. It was sort of had quite a deep cover, and so it would fit these 3 sort of little collections of pages quite nicely. So you'll see me here just slotting them all into each other, and they are going to be those little sections, those little signatures. I try to mix up the sizes. I don't want them all sort of going from bigger to smaller. I have a little bit of bigger, smaller, up, higher, lower pieces inside each of them, and I do play around with it a little bit more when I come to stitching them together. Now these little signatures that I've got, they use leftover papers. I also used one of the pieces from my desk from when I was working on another project, and you saw me sort of tearing that up at the start. That was that grid paper, and now I am just pulling in a packet of my Nespresso pods that I get from Allpress. So I think one of the prompts was something to do with a favourite hot drink, and so I was thinking ahead that I may use that sort of cardboard box as part of it. So when we think of junk journaling, the idea is that you collect junk, things that you're not going to use for anything else, and then you put them into a journal. And so I've used little elements of that, but in some ways my leftover pattern papers are kind of, or could be considered junk as well, because they are pieces that may or may not get made into future projects, or may end up at school for my class to create with. And so now I'm just covering the box that I decided was going to form my cover. I'm just trimming down a couple of pieces of paper that I already had cut into. I sort of had to search through my stash for pieces that I had cut into and not used much of, so that they would fit on the cover. The cover is something where you could easily have specific pieces of pattern paper or something that you want on it. When I did that first junk journal with Simone, it was sort of torn up pieces stuck down. I didn't really want that collage effect on this particular junk journal. I wanted something a little bit more refined, and as the sort of journal develops, over August I will play around with bits, change it up, add some bits onto the cover. But for the purposes today, to get this base album created, I am just sticking down some pieces so that it's kind of a foundation. It's what the creativity will go into, but in itself it's kind of this cute little work of art as well, really. So working out here what to do on the spine, and I do use my trimmer for this bit because I wanted it to be able to fit in that gap and to have that little bit hanging over at the top. Not sure in the end, I'm not 100% happy with the spine and how that works, but I may add some tape or add something at where those two bits on where the cover and the spine parts join up. I do end up having my binding on the outside of this journal, so at some point in the future I may cover that up as well, again just to strengthen the spine a wee bit more. So now I'm just sort of gluing and folding down the sides, cutting them down to fit. I just use Tombow here. You could use Mod Podge or use another adhesive. Not sure how strong double-sided tape would be, but sure, you could give that a go and see how it works and always re-stick something down later. The beauty of a junk journal is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about neat corners and sides and all the rest of it. It's about collecting and creating and having fun playing. And this putting this together is sort of been in my head for a long time, so it's really nice having a play and taking some of the concepts that were shared with me when I made that first little junk journal I showed at the start. Now I'm just sort of trying to find some inside paper that I'm going to tuck on the inside cover, and I do sort of find this cloud cover cardstock that I had cut into, and I am just going to trim that down to fit on the inside, just to cover those sort of overlappy pieces so that you don't see the cardboard. But for some people, seeing the actual card, or I could have trimmed those pieces on the top down so they didn't fold through, but because it was sort of a corrugated cardboard, I just wanted to add a little bit more extra strength to the album. And just using the Tombow again to stick this down. Now you saw that dimensional cover piece that I pulled off there. How many of you find those everywhere? I can see a couple more sitting on my desk as well, but they're just something that just seem to manage to find their way into everything, over everything, around everything. Anyway, getting this stuck down, there is essentially my cover good to go. You see my hand, I keep sort of pressing the pieces down where that spine is, because I'm not 100% happy with that, but I'm sure that over time I will work something out. So I've got those signatures folded in. See here, I'm playing with the ribbon trying to work out whether that would help cover up, but it's probably not quite wide enough. Anyway, now I've got those signatures ready to go. It's time to sort of create a bit of a template to do a bit of measuring and work out how I'm going to put the binding together. So I've got some beeswax thread, I've got an awl. I did wonder about using my Take Your Pick tool, but I didn't want to damage it, so I've just grabbed an awl that I had, and I've got some embroidery tapestry type needles as well. Now I measured sort of the length or the height of the pages, and now I'm creating sort of three 3 dots so that there's the same distance between the top and the bottom dot, and the central dot will be where the things come out. Now I am just scoring down the middle so that when I fold this piece that slips inside it, it will be able to show where the center is and fit alongside each of those points. So I have now created those. Sorry, excuse the dogs barking in the background. There must be a visitor visiting my son or something like that, and they're just letting us know that they have arrived. Anyway, hopefully you can ignore them. I find them hard to ignore. I am poking through the holes here for these 3 pieces. You'll see that there. And then I am going to put the holes as well on the back. So I'm just measuring across so that I can make sure that I'm going to be sticking each of these sort of at similar distances apart. And so I've just used the pen there to mark 3 little spaces. And now I am going to use my pencil just to mark the top and bottom so I can align that fold with the 3 dots, that template that I made on here as well. And you'll see that sort of lining up, and then I'm going to poke the all through. And the same again with the next one. Now, some people would probably be a lot more precise than I am here. They would probably measure this a whole lot better. However, that's not my style. So I am just poking some holes and hoping that it will all work out in the end. So because I've got 3 signatures, I've had to do 3 sets of those holes into the spine. And now it's time to stick in the first one. So just going to get this needle threaded. And I am going in the central point, and then I'm going out the top point. So we'll go through those pieces first. It looks a little bit fiddly, a little bit disjointed, but it all works out in the end. So I poked it through, but I've left some thread hanging out in the middle because I'm going to use that to tie it up, and then I'm taking it directly through the spine. A couple of other options here would be to use some elastic and bring that through and around a little bit like a traveler's notebook and one of the traveler's notebook dashboards. However, I want this to be sort of more stuck down. Now, excuse the hair that keeps peeking in. It's just because I'm sort of trying to make sure I am leaning into the right spots. So now we've got the pieces going in from the center, and now I'm coming back from the outside in, and I want to pull it through, and I want to make sure that there is some thread. I've gone through the bottom, and then I've come back up, and I'm just tying these up so that they are nicely sort of snug in there, and then just trimming that thread off. So there is my first signature. I'm not going to make you watch me do all of the signatures. However, they through the magic of video, I have gone off and I have done those, and now you can see me flick through the finished pages in each of these 3 signatures, ready for more creativity over August Artistry. Thanks for watching.